I don't know, if you ask me right now what my favorite lens is, I would have to say it's this lens right here, because this one has coffee in it. Oh yeah. But you know, it's good to be wrong. Well, maybe not to just be wrong, or, or else I'd be living a charmed life, but at least to learn you're wrong and make a change. That's how it was for me with the Nikon Z 100 to 400 zoom lens. My first opinion was that I already have the excellent 70 to 200 f2.8 lens that works extremely well with the Z2X teleconverter. So why buy another lens with really that same focal range and aperture? But as often happens, specific need can drive a change of thought, or at least reconsideration. I had a major air show approaching, and although I have prime lenses that would cover all of the sweet spots, I had no desire to drag all of those lenses with me to an air show and have to change them constantly. And that's what zooms are made for, right? Because the 70 to 200 works so well with the new Z-mount teleconverters, I took a leap of faith that the 100 to 400 would also. And that would give me a 140 to 560 millimeter zoom when combined with the 1.4 teleconverter, and I'd only lose one stop of light. Crazy math skills. So I placed an order with Nikon for the lens, and I put it on NPS priority, and then I realized after a while that I probably wasn't going to get it in time because these are, I believe, still in short supply. So I shopped around a little bit, and I was lucky to find one in stock at B&C Camera in Las Vegas. And the great folks there got it out to me right away, just a couple of days, and I was all set. I used two lenses for the air show, the 100 to 400, which had the 1.4 teleconverter on it the whole time, and the 800 PF. Well, I've talked about the 800 PF before, and I probably will show you some air show results using that lens in a future video. But I was really happy with my decision. Those two lenses on the Z9 made for the perfect gear, everything I was interested in. For starters, the 100 to 400 has really nice balance to it, especially when it's on a heavy body like the Z9. It has a feeling of solidness and feels like something substantial in the hand. It's not very heavy. It's about the same as the 7200 in both weight and overall size, till you do that. So you can handhold and shoot all day long with minimal fatigue. I put this Kirk foot on it literally right out of the box. I had pre-ordered the foot. I had the foot already. And when I got the lens and took it out of the box, I put this foot on it before I even mounted this lens onto a camera. The controls on the lens are really similar to all the new Z lenses. There's a function 1 button right over here, and there are 4 function 2 buttons right here. Now, the function 2 buttons can only perform one programmed action, but any of those buttons will perform that action. So the idea is that they're very easily accessible no matter what the orientation of the lens is. And there is the auto manual switch for focusing system, and the focus limiter switch that allows you to restrict the movement of the focus motor to improve performance, for distant subjects and to help avoid that excessive focus hunting. One of my favorite controls on the Z lenses is the function ring. It's located near the back of the lens, and I use mine a lot. It also has our digital display, and we can control a few various things like focal length or aperture and whatnot. The focus ring is good sized, and it's got just the right resistance, feels good, and it's also nicely located, very central in the lens, and it's in a pretty good spot. It is the rearmost of the two rubberized rings. Out front is the zoom ring, and it's just about perfect. It's wide enough to easily grab, with a nice rubberized coating, but not insanely wide like some zoom rings can be. And the zoom ring doesn't drift or creep at all, at least not so far. Part of the reason for that is because you turn it instead of some that you push and pull for zoom. The best feature of the zoom for me is the short throw, from 100 millimeters to 400 millimeters. You can quickly run the full range of the zoom without ever having to reposition your hand. So I'm at 100 right now. Now I'm at 400. So that short throw is a super, super great feature of this lens. Try following a fast-moving jet fighter or a bird in flight coming towards you, and you'll see the benefit of this. Here's a perfect example. These two photos were taken just a second or so apart. The first is at 490 millimeters, and the second at 250 millimeters. Panning a moving subject while zooming for distance or composition is much easier with this zoom than with many others. In addition to the fast-moving action of jet fighters, I've also used this lens for much quieter types of photography. There have been several technical reviews of this lens, so I'm not going to spout all the specs to you, but I will put many of the key specifications up on the screen. A camera lens is only as good or bad as how it fits into your toolkit and how well it performs those functions that you require of it. Zoom lenses tend to fit more use cases, of course, but a zoom lens is almost always a compromise. The convenience of focal length range is usually countered by two things: speed and optical quality. As far as speed, the 100mm aperture of 4.5 is not bad for most applications, very respectable. At 400mm, the aperture is reduced to f5.6. Variable aperture is a downside for this lens, but it also helps keep the price down. In nearly any daylight scenario, that's really not a big deal for me. But if the light gets too low, then I'm probably going to be switching to a prime lens. Regarding the optical quality consideration, Nikon seems to have made this a non-issue with the 100 to 400 zoom. Based on real images, the quality is sharp at all focal lengths and the images are nicely rendered. Great contrast and great color. And the fall off for the autofocus areas is very good. One of the best features for this lens is its minimum focusing distance. At 400 millimeters focal length, the minimum focus distance is just less than 1 meter. It's just a hair over 3 feet. Having that magnification available at close distance opens up a lot of creative possibilities with a lens like this. What's even better is that is not changed when you add a teleconverter. So with a 1.4 converter on it, you have a 560 millimeter lens that can focus at about 3.2 feet. And if you're able to sacrifice the light and shoot at f11, you could put a 2x TC on this thing and still shoot at 3.2 feet with an 800 millimeter. Here are some examples of close shots taken without a teleconverter, mostly at 400 millimeter and 5.6. This is an S-line lens, which means it has Nikon's top quality glass and build. It's priced at just under $3,000 US, so it is not cheap, but it's significantly less expensive than many of the alternatives. I won't try to pigeonhole who the users for this lens are. You know what you need more than I do, but for a zoom that ranges from intermediate to super telephoto range, this is one very nice option. It would be nice if it were a fixed aperture, but that would make it much more expensive and probably a lot heavier. But I will leave you with my pros and cons and my personal conclusion. Start with the pros. The great telephoto range. 100 to 400 is a great utility range for a zoom lens. Very sharp images with excellent color and contrast and virtually no artifacts. Lightweight and small, it's as easy to carry and handhold and stow and travel with as any lens I have. The autofocus is very fast. It's a native Z lens, fully integrates with all the great cameras like the Z9 and the Z7 II, Z6 II. And I still think among the positives is the price. $3,000 seems high, and it is, but for a lens that performs on par with those costing 3 times as much, it's pretty good. Combined with the Z-mount teleconverters, the performance is really excellent. The short throw zoom is fantastic control. That's probably my single favorite thing using it in the field. There are a few cons. So on the downside, it's not a super fast lens. That 5.6 aperture makes it so-so for sports and action, but for high shutter speeds, you'll need plenty of light. So another of the downsides, which has already been mentioned though, is the variable aperture. Your exposure and performance can change quickly as you zoom in and out of a scene, and also the fact that the lens barrel is not fixed in length. So it does telescope, as you can see, as you zoom in and out. This can introduce some dirt or moisture into the lens, possibly, and it changes the balance. So I definitely have a lot more pros than cons with this lens, and for my needs, it fills a sweet spot in focal length. And it does so without compromise on quality. I would never hesitate to reach for this lens where sharpness of image or beautiful rendering were concerned. I think the few cons are just the nature of zoom lenses for the most part. And as I said earlier, every zoom lens is a compromise in some way. But think of the alternative. I didn't feel like I had to have this lens when it was first announced, but when I realized the practical use for it, I was glad to get my hands on one. And more importantly, it's a keeper. This lens is either on my camera or in my camera bag every time I go out now. I'm Dave, and this is Nights and Weekends. You can follow me on Instagram at nights.weekends. And please like and subscribe this video. It really helps a little channel like this get out there and maybe get a little bit of traction. If you have questions or suggestions for maybe a follow-up on this lens or something similar, put them down in the comments below and I'll try and answer them. Thank you for watching. See you again soon.